Hey there folks, John here from Biddy Kong's Quest, and today we're going to do something just a little bit different than what we've done for the last couple weeks. We've spent a lot of time lately going over retro stuff, like Blast Corps for the N64, or even last week we were able to take a look at Kudzu, which is a new homebrew for the Game Boy that is coming out next month. But today I wanted to do something just a little bit different and focus on the Nintendo Switch. And we all know that this thing is kind of coming to the end of its life. We've all seen the rumors about the Switch 2 coming out soon, probably at the end of this year. So I wanted to start a monthly video series where I'm going to go through eShop games that I was playing during each year of the Nintendo Switch's life. And we're going to start with the year that it came out, 2017. There were not a ton of games that came out during that year, but some of the early games for the Switch are still some of its best even today, and I wanted to share some of those with you. So here we go. Now to start this out, we're going to establish some rules, and honestly the main one is that we're only really going to be focused on eShop exclusive titles, or at least titles that started out on the eShop. They might have gotten a physical edition later, and I'll show any physical editions that I have of any of these games, but the idea is these are games that were kind of born or first introduced to the Switch on the eShop. And in this video, it'll be ones that were introduced during 2017, the year that the Switch came out. There were a lot of games that were introduced that year, but only a few that really stood out. Now, we were all playing Breath of the Wild and a couple of the other early releases for the Switch, but we're not really talking about AAA physical titles in this video. We're talking about eShop games, and there were a few really good ones that came out that first year of the Switch's life, even though later on the Switch eShop would just become flooded with tons of stuff, good and mostly bad. There wasn't really a ton out at first, and honestly I remember for the first couple months of the Switch's life kind of wondering where all the good digital games were, or where all the good indie games were, because really all we had was Breath of the Wild and a couple of other things. And there was kind of this period where there wasn't a whole lot to play on the Switch if you were an early adopter. Now, I remember a few of these games that came out, and frankly, I feel like not a lot of people talk about a lot of the games that came out during the first year of the Switch's life. I feel like a lot of them are largely forgotten, which is an absolute shame because there are some really, really good ones. So I'm kind of excited about talking about these because I don't hear a lot of people talk about them. But there were a couple of small ones that started out. One of the ones that I really remember at very, very first, I think this is the very first game that I downloaded for the Switch, is a little isometric puzzle game called Pan Pan. If you've never heard of this game, it wouldn't surprise me at all. It's a really, really small studio. But basically you're this little person and you crash land in this world. It's a low poly kind of puzzle game. With some visual humor and stuff like that, but really it's pretty short. You can probably finish it in about an hour, but it's got a lot of heart and a lot of character to it, and I don't know that I've ever heard actually anybody talk about this game in a video on YouTube before, so I wanted to point it out because I do remember that was the very first game that I downloaded on the Switch, probably based on a review from Nintendo Life or something like that. And you know, it's one that I don't hear people talk about, and I actually really did enjoy that game, so I wanted to feature that one. But moving on from that, the first big game that I really downloaded was Blaster Master Zero. And if you've never played Blaster Master Zero, that is a remake, total re-envisioning actually, of the original Blaster Master. It kind of starts with the same story and sort of follows the same kind of story arc as the first one, but fleshes it out a ton. If you're a fan of Inti Create's work, you probably are familiar with it. You're probably familiar with the fact that there's actually a Blaster Master Zero 2 and a Blaster Master Zero 3 that continued the story. Those are totally new, not inspired by the original at all. And it just added a ton of story and a ton of character and a ton of heart to that series. that I grew up with, because I grew up with the original Blaster Master. I used to love that game. And you know, it's one of those original Metroidvanias that nobody ever really talks about. Well, Blaster Master Zero is the reboot of it, and it's an absolutely fantastic game. I would highly recommend picking it up. It's usually, I think it's like $9.99 full price right now, but it's almost always on sale these days because it came out so long ago. And that's the beauty of some of these games that came out in 2017. Most of them are on sale most of the time because they're older and people don't really buy them anymore. So if you've never checked out Blaster Master Zero, oh, the music is absolutely stellar as well. Just a super good game, great pixel art, just a really, really good time. Absolutely check out Blaster Master Zero if you've never checked it out before. Next, I want to talk about a game that I think was a little bit polarizing when it first came out because it had a lot of character to it, and it really kind of reminded me of an older, like, Rare game, like Banjo-Kazooie, and that game is Snake Pass. Now, if you've never heard of this game before, again, it's got a really kind of N64 Rare feel to it. But it's this game where you control a snake, and it's kind of a puzzle 3D platformer thing. But instead of being able to jump and control the snake like normal, you actually have to slither, and you can only go forward if you're moving back and forth like a snake would, which is a really, really clever control scheme. I actually got really into it for a little while, and then it got a little too hard for me. Admittedly, I've never beaten that one, but I do remember really enjoying it, even though it's kind of a unique type of experience. I would highly recommend downloading it because that one's actually on sale a lot too. And again, I don't hear people talk about Snake Pass very much anymore. It was really, really a fun game. And also took inspiration from one of my favorite games. If people who've been watching the channel for a while know, one of my favorite games ever is Snake Rattle and Roll, mainly because that is the game that I got at Christmas with my NES when I was like 4. And I absolutely adore Snake Rattle and Roll, which is a classic Rare game, like rare game on the NES, one of their earliest ones. It's an isometric platformer. There are some absolutely stellar callbacks to that game in Snake Pass, and yeah, I really like that game. I wish more people would check it out. So if you've never checked out Snake Pass, if you've never even seen it before, it is totally worth a play. I will warn you, the controls are probably different than anything you've ever controlled before, but if you stick with it, it's a really fun game, and I highly recommend it. Now, this next one I played absolutely non-stop when it came out. And you gotta understand that at that time, Mega Man 11 had not come out, and it had been forever since we had Mega Man 10. We had Mighty Number 9 that came in and tried to kind of fill the gap, but that was an absolute disaster. I honestly didn't think that it was nearly as bad as a lot of people did, but I mean, you can't argue that that game was at least a PR disaster, and definitely not the strongest Mega Man game. I mean, maybe middling as a Mega Man game goes, and I think some people would probably think I'm being too generous. There was another game that came out a couple years later, I think, maybe a year later, and that was called Mighty Gunvolt Burst. And that was another one that was made by Inti Creates, and it was actually a Mighty Number 9 and Azure Striker Gunvolt crossover. And if you don't know Azure Striker Gunvolt, that is a game series that very, very heavily mimics the Mega Man X series. So if you've never played it, highly recommend that. Totally original IP, doesn't have anything to do with Mega Man, not connected at all, but plays a lot like Mega Man X. And then here comes Inti Creates with this crossover between Mighty Number 9 and Azure Striker Gunvolt. And it is absolutely stellar. It's kind of like having a Mega Man game where when you beat the bosses, you can then go in and customize all the weapons, and you can change not only like the speed and behavior of the weapons, but how big they are and like all these different things. It's just this really, really cool experience, and I really feel like that a lot of people haven't played this game and really need to. It's fast. There's a ton of DLC. They really cared about this game, like probably way more than they should have, because they added a ton of extra DLC playable characters that you could play well after the game was finished. Like I'm talking like a year, maybe 2 years afterwards for this little indie game. Again, I just don't feel like anybody talks about this game anymore. It was very well received when it first came out, but everybody seems like they've forgotten about Mighty Gunvolt Burst, and I think that's an absolute shame. So check it out. if you have not heard of it, because it is absolutely 100% worth it. Now, in my opinion, I think I saved the best game on this list for last. But before I talk about it, I do want to give just a little bit of background. In 2017, I actually was on a trip to LA. I live on the East Coast and I do film work, so I was on the way out there for a shoot. And that's like a 7-hour plane ride. And this was around the time that I had kind of gotten burnt out on Breath of the Wild, and there wasn't a whole lot else out that I really wanted to play, that I really owned. So when I was in the airport, I decided to download Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap based on a recommendation from a friend. I wasn't really expecting a lot from it. I thought it looked kind of cool, but man, I was absolutely blown away by the art style and the music and really just everything about it. It was really everything I was looking for in a game at the time. And if you go back and you look at it, gameplay-wise, I mean, it's pretty simple just because it's based on an old Master System game. It's just a remaster, but calling this game a remaster is such an understatement. The art style is just incredible. They redid all of the music, and then on top of all that, this was one of the first games I ever played where you could switch between retro graphics and the remastered graphics on the fly just by going into the menu. And you can do that with the music too. You know, I know that's something that a lot of remasters do now, but at the time, it wasn't really all that common. At least for me, I'd never experienced that in a game. And so that was a whole new thing. And it was just this really, really great experience. So I was really, really excited just to play the game. I think I probably finished it twice just on that trip alone. And then I found out something that made me fall in love with it even more. And that is that the Wonder Boy series, whether you may know this, I don't know, is actually the same or part of the same family as the Adventure Island series. Now, this is Adventure Island 2, and this is my favorite Adventure Island game. If you don't know what Adventure Island is, that's actually what all of my graphics for my channel are based on for the most part, because I am such a huge Adventure Island fan. This was a huge impact on me growing up, and this is one of my absolute favorite games. Now, this is Adventure Island 2. What I did find out is the original Adventure Island, which plays a little bit different than this, is actually a remaster, or really a port to the NES of Wonder Boy from the Master System, which is fantastic and a really interesting bit of trivia that I had no idea about before I started looking into a little bit more about Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap and whether or not there were other games in the series, and then I dove down this rabbit hole. There's a history video coming on that one because that is a really interesting story. But that led me down this rabbit hole where I found out that Limited Run Games was coming out with a collector's edition of the game. And so I actually ended up buying the physical version. This is actually the PlayStation version, and it's a really cool physical edition. There's some really, really cool goodies in here. If you guys want me to unbox this at some point, I'd be happy to do so. But this is a really cool physical edition. Has this really good Master System looking kind of box art to it, and lots of cool stuff. So I had to get this because you know, I don't get a lot of physical editions of eShop games. I don't get a lot of collector's editions just because they take up a ton of space. But I loved this game that much that I really needed to get it. And then they decided to release several months later a Switch physical edition of the game. And so I double dipped, actually triple dipped at this point. And that one came with this cool little keychain, and it came with an instruction manual, and an alternate cover and all kinds of stuff. And it's very rare that I like triple dip on a game, but for this one, I did it. But honestly, I kind of fell down a rabbit hole because that's not where this ended. Next, I got Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom when it came out, which came out a couple years later. I think it might have come out the year after Dragon's Trap, so this might end up on another eShop video from 2018 or 2019. And this is a fantastic Metroidvania. If you have never played this game, oh my gosh, it's so good. You've got to play this game if you like Metroidvanias. And then I found out that they remastered Monster World 4. Asha in Monster World is what it's called here. Again, part of the Wonder Boy Monster World series. And then this doesn't end. This doesn't end. They released a collection, a Wonder Boy collection of a bunch of the original games on the Switch. Now, this is a great story because this was an absolute disaster with the licensing for this, because this is the version that has only 4 of the games on it. There's another version of this that has like 21 versions of the games on it, and it's completely different. And I saw it go up on sale, but not just the normal version of it. This is the biggest collector's edition I've ever gotten in my life. I have a problem, I think, with Wonder Boy stuff. Comes with a music box. That was the selling point for me. Like an actual wind-up music box. Bookends and all kinds of other stuff. If y'all want me to unbox this, this is the one to unbox, because this is one of the sweetest collector's editions I think I have ever gotten in my life. But this video is already too long. And like this thing is like bigger than my head. Like this thing is huge. But it's a really sick collector's edition. But yeah, Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap had that big of an impact on me that it started a years-long collection of Wonder Boy stuff. That I really was not a Wonder Boy fan before this. And ever since Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap, this one right here, I was that impressed with it that it started me on this, and it literally single-handedly made me a fan of the series, and then made me realize that it was tied to another one of my favorite series of all time. And I can't recommend it enough. If you've never played this game, it goes on sale pretty often, and frankly, it would be worth it at full price, in my opinion. For me, obviously, it's been worth it at full price several times. But that's my pick for best game of 2017 from the eShop. And, you know, all of the games on this list are pretty good. Like, I still go back and play all of them occasionally. It's the beauty of having an eShop game, right? It just lives on your Switch. But Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap, if you don't try any of the other ones on this list, definitely try that one, because it is totally worth it. That will about do it, though, for this week. This is a video series, like I said. I'm going to do one of these a month, unless the Switch 2 happens to come out in, like, you know, April or May or something like that, because technically I should have 7 of these. So the goal is to do one of these monthly, and so next month we'll do 2018. And kind of point out some games that you might have missed from 2018, or maybe you just forgot about. I mean, I forget about games all the time that I played before. But the idea was just to shine a spotlight on some of my favorite games from each year on the Switch. So that'll about do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the new subscribers we've had lately, all the new views. That has been absolutely fantastic, and I'm so encouraged by that. You know, even having 1,000 subs, that still shocks me that enough people would want to watch and enjoy what I'm doing to have that. So I am so thankful for each and every one of you. Until next week, like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.